is a spiritual deity. Freedom and liberty and justice shall fight for you. When you fight for freedom with all your soul, take it from me. This is Broadcasting Corporation of Biafra, BCB, the voice of the nation, the voice.
And here is a special announcement from the leadership of Biafra government in exile. This is BCB.
Good evening, good afternoon, or good morning, depending on wherever you are on this planet Earth. I welcome you, fellow Biafrans, as we continue on this journey of self-determination and freedom for our homeland. It's always useful for us to remind ourselves who we are and how we got to where we are today. Also, the reasons why we are seeking self-determination. The reasons we want to exit from Nigeria and become once again an independent nation for all the peoples of Biafra and the nation of Biafra. What we know today, if we just start from what we know today, from the declaration of Biafra as an independent nation on the 30th of May 1967, demonstrating that a nation indeed existed from that date, May 1967. That nation was recognized by some sections of the African continent and beyond. That nation had its own courts, its judiciary, its legislature, and its executive bodies. That nation had its central bank, its currency, passports, police, army, navy, and air force. That nation had diplomatic ties with nations. That nation produced and refined its own crude, built and guided its own missiles, produced its own firearms, produced cluster bombs. That nation modified vehicles and turned them into tanks and fighter jets. From a young age, that nation was violently attacked by Nigeria in a genocidal war. Biafrans fought bravely in self-defense. At the end of hostilities in January 1970, over 3.5 million Biafrans have been killed. Out of that number, over 1 million children died from starvation and hunger as a result of the blockade imposed by Nigeria and Britain. The USA, the United States, just looked the other way. Almost all the nations of Europe did the same. They looked the other way while millions and millions of children and women were slaughtered. As the Middle East crisis escalates and Israel prepares for a ground invasion into Gaza, I cannot but ponder in quiet contemplation at the cries of humanitarian catastrophe that Gaza has become as a result of not only the airstrikes by Israel on Hamas positions, which inevitably resulted in and continues to result in civilian casualties, but also as a result of a blockade imposed by Israel on Gaza, cutting off the supply of water, medicine, and fuel. I couldn't help but ponder on the same catastrophe and suffering endured by our parents, grandparents, brothers, and sisters who suffered similar catastrophe, if not worse. It is quite remarkable that the United Nations and others are shouting of humanitarian catastrophe, calling for humanitarian pause and corridors to be established, and calling for ceasefire to allow much needed aid to get into Gaza. No media blockade, no media blackout. Of course, we now have social media. Ironically, the BBC is reporting live from Jerusalem, from Ashkelon, and sometimes from inside Gaza, as the world recoils at the pictures coming out of Gaza and from the kibbutz in Israel, at the barbarity and cruelty the human race is capable of inflicting on itself. The barbaric murder of children and women and the elderly. Even when some were just sleeping or having fun in parties or actually in hospital. These evils should be condemned, whether by Hamas in the kibbutz of Israel or in Gaza. Every life is sacred and precious. And innocent children, women, and the elderly must be protected at all times and in all circumstances. The world should have shown this same level of care and concern over the brutal murder and genocide committed against Biafra children, women, and the elderly. Biafra and Biafrans, whether they be Igbo, Ijaw, Efik, whether they are Ogoja, Ibibio, Isoko, Anioma, Ikwere, or they are Asian or Oron, and many others, have been set back hundreds of years as a result of being forcibly yoked with Nigeria. Biafrans are not Nigerians. Biafra is not Nigeria. Nigeria and the British have never accepted Biafrans, have not given us equality, fair play, or justice in any way, shape, or form. And the infrastructure we need to compete are non-existent. The lack of seaports in Calabar, Port Harcourt, Onitsha, and Aba, the lack of rail lines connecting our towns and cities with each other, and with the towns and cities in the west and in the north. The lack of good roads and fully functional international airports means that economic activities in the southeast Biafra land is diminished and continues to diminish. And as a result, there are no jobs for our people, especially the youth. As our youth take to internet crimes and other crimes, and many more embark on daring journeys to Europe and America in search of pastures green. Many perish in the Mediterranean Sea and in the desert. The economic miracles of the 60s was halted by Nigeria and never recovered. If it had continued, there wouldn't be any reason for our people to run away from our land, to go out to Lagos or to Kano or every other part of Nigeria to look for work, or indeed to embark on dangerous trips to Europe. Even when there's Sam Mbakwe, God bless his soul, and Jim Nwobodo worked incredibly hard and aggressively to reindustrialize our land. The Nigerian military, through the same Muhammadu Buhari, again made sure it was stopped. An unnecessary coup in 1983 removed Mbakwe and Ngobodo. And industrialization and the economic plan was jettisoned. Puppets like Ike Nwachukwu were installed in Imo State to destroy everything that Mbakwe built. And subsequent military administrators made sure that they drag us back to square one. And now what do we see? Corrupt politicians doing the bidding of their masters and looting to their hearts' full, while neglecting the needs of our people. Exposing us to dangers, especially the dangers that the Fulani headsmen bring, and the dangers that bandits and currently unknown gunmen are bringing to our homeland. And so where do we go from here? The answer remains in Biafra self-determination. Biafra must exit from Nigeria, and this remains our only option. Those who had faith in the last election, in Peter Obi and the Obedient Movement, they would have now realized the folly of thinking that the criminals and the cabals running Nigeria will ever allow an Igbo man to be president of Nigeria. Never. You can be sure now that you were daydreaming all along. And now that the Supreme Court of Nigeria has put the final nail in the coffin of your hopes and aspirations, I now humbly urge you to wake up and smell the coffee. Come with us. Let us restore and build our nation and give ourselves the chance to experience in our lifetime and for our children and generations to come what it means to live in a decent society, a developed place that is fair, just, safe, and prosperous. I will not finish without calling again for the release of Kanu by the Nigerian government. Let Kanu go now. And also free all Biafra detainees that you're holding. They are innocent and must be free. I call on all our elders, whether you are Igbo, or you are Ijo, or you are Efik, every elder in Biafra land must rise up and make your voices heard. You must demand the release of Kanu and every Biafran detainee. Agitation for self-determination is not a crime. These men and women that are being detained and tortured in DSS facilities, in police cells, are innocent. They are well within their rights to ask for freedom, to ask for a referendum, to speak for themselves, and to decide whether or not they want to remain or exit from Nigeria. Freedom now. Our elders must speak up now. Talking about elders, I will end by reading some of the writings of our eminent professor, Uzodimma Nwala, one of our respected elders who have been speaking out. Permit me to end on this note. This is what the eminent professor wrote very recently. It's titled, After the Supreme Court Judgment, What Next? So I'll present just some sections of it as we close. The real question is, before the election itself, what next? What options were we pursuing to achieve our goal of political liberation? Nnamdi Kanu was captured and held in detention in Kenya for almost 10 days, and the leadership of IPOB and other followers did not know until he was brought into Nigeria. That was a brutal judgment on the political capacity of the gurus in IPOB. There are veritable lessons to be learned from the struggles of Nelson Mandela and Fidel Castro. In his sober moment, Nnamdi Kanu did openly acknowledge that my speech at the Yaradua Center strategically pointed to our way forward. Later that year, Nnamdi Kanu sent his lawyer, Barrister Aloy Ejimakor, requesting me to visit him at the DSS where he is held. We have worthy historical examples to learn from, even on the Nnamdi Kanu case. Professor Wanla continues to write, Nelson Mandela was in prison for 27 years, fighting apartheid. And each time he was offered to be released, his reply was, unless you are dismantling apartheid along with my release. And so it was for 27 years. But ANC, the African National Congress, never abandoned him while he was in prison. They took all strategic steps to ensure his safety while in prison. Nelson Mandela and the ANC and the emasculated blacks in apartheid South Africa maintained a healthy synergy between all age brackets in the black community. There was mutual respect and collaboration between Mandela, Desmond Tutu, and other leaders of the anti-apartheid movement. ANC never harbored 419ers, fraudsters, who would baptize Mandela with all kinds of weird titles for the sake of enhancing their dubious thread. And finally he wrote, today the song of freedom is raging in our region. We are now more exposed to the global and local alliance structure of the forces and instruments of our subjugation. More than ever before, the INEC, the Nigerian judiciary, the armed forces have been exposed beyond all reasonable doubt. Fellow compatriots, it was the Chinese general who said that the best general is one that wins a battle without firing a shot. Another person said, I think it was Machiavelli, that all unarmed prophets have failed, while all armed prophets have succeeded. To an ordinary mind, these two pieces of wisdom are contradictory, but a strategic mind understands that they consist of one unified thread of wisdom fundamental in the kind of life and death struggle the Igbo nation has faced before, during and since the Biafra War. May our God guide us and liberate us from both our enemies and the fraudsters and traitors within us. Finally, we need to draw the correct lessons from our post-election predicament. We should not ignore the lessons learned from the election itself. First, we are not as isolated in the Nigerian equation as we were before the election. It is more crucial now that we must appreciate how weak we are within the international community and we must address that reality. And I say a big thank you to Professor Zadimawala for these words of wisdom. And I hope and pray that more of our elders, eminent professors and the elite will truthfully and honestly and boldly and courageously stand up for this cause. For it is indeed a noble cause. Each one of us must take responsibility. We must look at the man in the mirror and decide for ourselves what each and every one of us are capable of doing to ensure that we become free. That in our lifetime we are able to see a great nation of Biafra that will be respected, that will be fair, that every citizen will be equal and treated with respect, and that you can aspire to be whatever you want to be and have the opportunity to succeed if you work hard. And thank you, and God bless you. And may God bless our nation, Biafra.
This is the Broadcasting Corporation of Biafra, BCB.
This is BCB, the Broadcasting Corporation of Biafra, bringing you the news headlines for the week. In the news this week, court orders FG Southeast governors to apologize, pay Kanu 8 billion for rights violation. Ohanaeze vows to end insecurity, bloodletting in the Southeast. Stay tuned for details to follow shortly. Court orders FG Southeast governors to apologize, pay Kanu 8 billion for rights violations. A High Court sitting in Enugu on Thursday asked the Nigeria federal government and Southeast governors to pay the sum of 8 billion naira to the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. The court also mandated the respondents to apologize to Kanu for the infringement of his fundamental rights. The ruling was a sequel to a suit brought before the court by the IPOB legal team led by Aloy Ejimako, according to the 2017 prescription of IPOB as a terror organization. Justice A.O. Onovo, while delivering judgment on the suit marked E/20/2023, declared that the practical application of the Terrorism Prevention Act and the executive of administrative actions of the respondents, Southeast Governors Forum, and the federal government, which directly led to the proscription of IPOB and its listing as a terrorist group, was unconstitutional. The court, according to the release by Ejimako, further held that IPOB, being comprised of citizens of Nigeria of the Igbo and other Eastern Nigerian ethnic groups, professing the political opinion of self-determination and the consequent arrest, detention and prosecution of the applicant, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, as a member/leader of said IPOB is illegal, unlawful, unconstitutional, and amounts to infringement of the applicant's fundamental rights not to be subjected to any disabilities or restriction based on his ethnicity, as enshrined and guaranteed under Section 42 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 as amended, and his fundamental rights as enshrined under Articles 2, 3, 19 and 20 of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights Enforcement and Ratification Act. The release made available to the press further read, "Today, I led a team of lawyers to a landmark victory before the High Court of Enugu State in suit number E/20/2023 filed in January 2023 against the Southeast Governors Forum and the federal government for their collective executive actions in 2017 that led to the proscription of IPOB and declaring it a terrorist group in contravention of Section 42 of the Constitution, which prohibits discrimination based on ethnicity. In a well-considered judgment that lasted for over 3 hours, the High Court granted the following reliefs: that self-determination is not a crime and thus cannot be used as a basis to arrest, detain, and prosecute the applicant Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. Ordered the respondents, jointly or severally, to issue official letters of apology to the applicant Mazi Nnamdi Kanu for the infringement of his said fundamental rights and publication of said letters of apology in 3 national dailies. Ordered the respondents to jointly or severally pay the sum of 8 billion naira to the applicant Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, being monetary damages claimed by the applicant against respondents jointly and severally for the physical, mental, emotional, psychological, property, and other damages suffered by the applicant as a result of the infringement of his fundamental rights by the respondents. Ohanaeze vows to end insecurity, bloodletting in the southeast. The Apex Igbo Social Cultural Organization, Ohanaeze Ndigbo, has vowed to use a non-kinetic approach to resolve the insecurity challenges in the southeast, insisting that the use of guns and force will not restore peace in the region. The President General of the organization, Emmanuel Iwuanyanwu, disclosed this at the weekend in Enugu during a press briefing to announce the program for the September 29 Igbo Day celebration, saying that the blood flowing in Igbo land is no longer acceptable. Iwuanyanwu, who described killings and bloodshed in the southeast as strange, said, "As a father, I am tired of the death of my children. Each time I hear that somebody is killed, I feel sad, considering that most of them are doing what they're doing because of the hunger and unemployment. I'm not saying that the hunger and unemployment should make one a criminal, but not everyone has the capacity to endure hunger. As a father, I am appealing to everyone to embrace peace. Non-kinetic approach to this problem requires everybody's support. State and federal governments for us to have peace in the region." Iwuanyanwu stressed that he will make whatever sacrifice it is to ensure that non-kinetic approach to ending the bloodshed in Igbo land. He said, "I'm going to reach these people by any means to beg them or even give my life if they want. I will surrender it to ensure peace in the region." He said he would send a delegation to Finland and other places to beg those causing bloodshed in the region to stop. Iwuanyanwu assured that they will not be arrested or killed, appealing to them to say what they want the Southeasterners to do. He added, "Those who are hungry, we will find them something to do to keep them happier, but bloodshed and killing should stop." The Igbo leader appealed to the federal government to increase the allocation to the Southeast governors, saying that they are spending so much to fight insecurity in the zone, neglecting development projects. On the palliatives being distributed by the federal government to cushion the effects of the fuel subsidy removal, Iwuanyanwu stated it would not resolve hunger and other social upheavals in the country. That brings an end to our news for the week. This is BCB, the Broadcasting Corporation of Biafra, saying thank you for joining us this week, and thank you for listening, and goodbye, friends.
Thank you for listening to us today. Join us next time for news, cultural, and educational programs. This is the Broadcasting Corporation of Biafra, BCB.
Hail to Biafra, consecrated nation. O Fatherland, this people's holy pledge. Defending thee shall be our dedication. Spilling our blood will count our privilege. The waving standard reachable, it's the free shall always be a flag of liberty. We shall emerge triumphant from this ordeal, and through the crucible unscathed will pass. When we are poised, the walls of battle to heal, we shall remember those who died in mass. Then shall